Hello, everyone. Welcome to this next installment of the ECLP Leadership Dialogue series. We are members of the Community and Membership Engagement Subcommittee working to address the challenges, concerns of our fellow early career scientists by creating and facilitating team building activities and networking possibilities among the early career leadership program cohort members. Now, our committee is organizing this leadership dialogue series to highlight the role of effective leadership in research. Our series aims to invite recognized scientific leaders from academia and industry to speak about what being a leader means to them and highlight the attributes needed to be an effective leader in science. We plan to make these discussion sessions accessible through YouTube to early career scientists in the Genetic Society of America and beyond. Moreover, we aim through our series to promote discussion around the need for good leadership in academic research, which will greatly impact laboratory and scientific culture on a global level. And next, Elena is going to introduce our speaker of the day.
Yeah, it's my pleasure today, hello everyone, to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Isabel Schön, who is a senior researcher at the Royal Belgium Institute of Natural Science in Brussels, which is in Belgium, where she leads the freshwater biology research team with currently 10 members. She's also a guest professor at Hasselt University, teaching molecular ecology. She has PhD research in Germany, UK, Australia, and the US. She has been coordinating the polar research program at the Royal Belgium Institute of Natural Science for 10 years. Her own research focused on ecology and evolution in aquatic habitats, using, amongst other, tiny crustaceans known as ostracods as a model system. In particular, Isa is interested in speciation and adaptation of ostracods in different habitats and geographic regions, as well as finding solution to the paradox of sexual reproduction from an asexual point of view. Well, when it comes to contribution to the scientific community at large, Isa is also the editor-in-chief of the Belgium Journal of Zoology and a board member of the Royal Belgium Society for Zoology. Back in 2003, she founded and led as a president the Belgian Women in Science Network, or shortly BWISE, which aims to empower women in the European scientific community. But nowadays, it is open to everyone in the world. We are delighted to have you with us today and are looking forward to learning from you about your leadership style and gaining insight about what leadership is to you.
Thank you very much for this invitation. Thanks very much for the nice introduction, Irina, and I'm very happy to be here and talk about my experiences.
I'll start with the first question that we have, and right away take it concerning you starting the pioneering initiative of Be Wise. It's been about 20 years since that initiative started that initiative. And so what we'd like to know is, how has it been for you to watch this organization grow into this strong community of support for women scientists that it is today?
So I can say I'm extremely happy how BWise has grown. I can maybe also say a little bit about why I started BWise. So when I was a student and a PhD student, there were many women around me, but the further I advanced in my career as a postdoc, the less women there were. And I realized that maybe this is a phenomenon across disciplines and other women might have similar unhappy experiences, and this is why I started BWise. So we have always been a multidisciplinary network because we thought the challenges women scientists face are very similar, regardless if you're in the life sciences, in physics, or wherever. So meanwhile, I started this, and it took me quite some time at the beginning, but then I passed it on to other women. And recently we celebrated the 20-year anniversary, to which I was invited, and also other presidents after me were invited. And it was really, really nice, made me very happy to see how much the organization had grown. And I could also see that each president had left her own mark on the network, like encouraging different initiatives. So more recently, for example, there has been a very extensive mentoring program, but there have now also been actions to encourage girls to become interested in science, like starting at a very early age. And I find it fantastic that I have passed the torch on and that the torch is still passed on. So it made me really happy, let's say. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's really an amazing network and achievement. Moving into our next question. When we talk about women in science, there is often the implication and kind of expectation that being an active scientist and parent at the same time. Do you think that there's a significant difference, at least in heteronormative relationships, between the two parents and the impact on their careers because of this disparity? For example, men may have more flexibility, while women need to sacrifice their professional lives more for the sake of parenting. What are your thoughts on this?
I think this is partly true. I'm also a mother myself, but I have only one child. But I could see, I mean, poor biologically, for example, if you work in a lab with dangerous substances, you cannot work in that lab for 9 months. So this really can cause a lot of problems if you are on an ongoing project. And also, I think realistically, it's very difficult to be a full-time mother and a full-time scientist because kids need their parents, and also you wouldn't want to be a parent and then just put your kids somewhere and never see it. Okay, so I think there is a biological reality, but I also see more recently that more and more young fathers also take their share of the burden. I think in the last years when we hired postdocs, there were also men who said, I will take paternity leave or I will only work part-time. So I have the feeling some things are shifting. But I think it would also be naive to think that this is not having any effect on your career, especially when the kids are small. I think, yeah, unfortunately, or fortunately, it is the mother because fathers cannot breastfeed, obviously, for example. So, yeah, so it has a bigger effect on the mother. And I think it's also more difficult to leave your kid behind for a long time. If you would, for example, go and do field work in Antarctica or somewhere very remote, that would also be very hard. But that would be hard, I think, whichever parent would go. On the other hand, I read that women careers last longer than men's careers, and that women especially become really productive at the end of their careers when men sort of simmer down. So I think it's very important to look at this at your whole career path. So you could be frustrated when you are a young scientist and you try to juggle everything. So maybe you want to work part-time and so on. But I think if you look at the entire path, it will equal out in the end. So this is something maybe to keep in mind. Yeah.
Because like I'm trying to start a family myself, and it's always scary looking at some of the coworkers around me going through motherhood. Now you've been through motherhood yourself too. How has, I guess, being a parent impacted your scientific journey, and how have you managed to juggle between being an academic and also a parent?
Well, by choosing my partner wisely, that's what one of my more senior female colleagues had told me once. Yeah, choose your partner wisely. I can only emphasize this is absolutely true. And then I think, yeah, I worked some period part-time because it was just not possible to do everything. But then I was not leading a team, so that was easier than it would be now, for example. And I had also a lot of support from my mother and my sisters at that time because our kid was the first kid in the family and everybody was very excited about taking care of the baby. But we have also had to be very creative because at that time there was almost no structural support. So I have brought our son to Germany, and then I flew from there to conferences, for example, while he was with my mother. We have dragged him all over the globe. He has been everywhere, from Australia to different countries in Europe. When we had conferences, we tried to find a place where he could be taken care of. And very often the conference organizers had zero experience with this, were absolutely unhelpful. Then we organized it ourselves. But sometimes we also had very positive experiences that they were very open. And I think the first organization to actually do this more structurally was the European Society for Evolutionary Biology, because they offered that on campus during the conference, for example. And that was really helpful. So you could just bring your kid, attend the conference program, and then get him again in the evening. So it has been good, but I would have wished there would have been more structural support. I think things are moving a little bit more now, but there's still many things which should be solved. Like if you would bring somebody to help you during the conference, now you pay this yourself. I think there should be some funds for this. If this is needed, there should be childcare offered. So there is still some support to be done. It can be done, but you have to be really creative, I think. And we were also lucky because we had a very open-minded kid. Maybe he became like this because we dragged him everywhere, that I don't know. But he was very open to go to a new kindergarten group and play with other kids in different languages and so on. So he did all of this really well. But maybe sometimes he had quite enough of his scientist parents. I don't know. But so I would say, be creative, and try to find support from your institution if possible.
Wonderful. I mean, your journey is very interesting. And did you see like any change? Because, okay, it's been some time ago. How about now? Maybe you can give some advice to nowadays parents to be how really survive. Maybe something got better, or what is your insight? You're a leader, you lead your people. So
I lead my people, yes. And for my people, I make a lot of allowances for those who are parents. So there's absolutely no discussion if a kid is sick that person stays at home. So if they drop me a line, my kid is sick, then there is no discussion that that person stays and we solve it differently. So I think there has to be also some flexibility. My personal experience was the kid always gets ill in the most stressful moment. It just seems to be a part of Murphy's Law. I don't know. So you should certainly, I think, one of my advices would be don't plan anything too narrowly. So you have to allow for things going wrong. So you have to allow for your kid being ill just the day before you have to give the talk. It was a classic. So have your talk ready in advance. But I also have to say, having been a mother, I have seen that I became much more organized and I work much more efficiently than I used to before I was a parent. Because I have no more time to sort of, muck around. I just have to start immediately. So this is something maybe you learn when you go along, that there is no more luxury to get into something. You just start like that. So I don't know if this answers your question, Irina, or if you would like some more on
you
this.
totally answer my question. Thank you.
I could maybe add one more thing, because recently there was a book revision in Nature or Science about a woman in botany who said that it was extremely difficult to be a mother and a scientist, and she had wished there would have been rooms for breastfeeding. And I can actually sign this, because when you are a breastfeeding mother and you have to pump the milk off, sorry for becoming now really plastic, I did this either in my office or on the toilet. And then one time my boss came in when I was just in the act of the pumping. But I was wearing a very white blouse, so I could just cover up everything. But it would have been nice if there would have been a nice room to do this, like a cozy room for the mothers to do this. I think that is not so difficult for organizations to install. So that would have been useful if you are a very young mother and you return to work.
So the main reason why this leadership dialogue series exists is that we, as the community and membership engagement subcommittee, felt that there was a real need for more accessible leadership training in academia. So prevailing attitudes in this environment are often seen as kind of ruthless competition for resources, which is definitely not conducive to producing good science. And how has your experience been, both while working as a leader and mentor and while working with other leaders in different projects or institutions?
I think there is certainly quite some truth in it that science is a very competitive field. And the way the selection is often going is not choosing good leaders, but choosing very competitive scientists who will have very high-level publications and attract a lot of external funding. None of these two is making people good leaders. I actually think very often it might be the contrary. So I can say I have had some bad experiences with colleagues. And I can only urge a word of caution, because sometimes you have already committed yourself in a project to collaborate, and then you only figure out while the project is running that actually this was not a good idea, but you cannot get out anymore. So I have had some not so positive experiences, but it's very difficult to know this in advance, I think, because often you think you know people, but then you actually don't if they are under pressure, because then some people act differently than you would. On the other hand, I think, I try to be a good leader for my team, for example. So I try to create a positive working atmosphere and a non-toxic atmosphere. But you also need results. So this is, but this is, I think, a challenge you have anywhere where you are a boss of other people, where you work with people. This is just, and science is all working with people. And sometimes we forget that this is a challenge which is also in other disciplines. You work in a team, you work with others, and you will always have people who are assholes, sorry for saying, and for people who are good leaders. I think the problem with science is that we grow into being leaders without having been trained to be leaders. And there a lot could still be done, I think, a lot.
That is very true.
Yeah, because you choose science because you like to do scientific work. You don't choose science because you want to lead a team of 10 people. So it takes you a while to realize that this might also become part of the job as you grow in it.
So I guess looking around you then, I guess the answer is no, but have you seen a good amount of training for leadership skills being proposed? Or I guess, like, what do you think of the current level of training being offered for those skills?
I think the current level is far too low. I think it's improving a little bit, at least in Europe, because you have PhD schools. So these are like schools for PhD students of different disciplines at the university level, for example. And I see there with my PhD students that they are now trained in soft skills as well. So they are trained in presentation, writing, and so on. But I don't see that there is a lot of leadership training, maybe some, but I think it could be more. It's good that this starts now at an earlier level, but if I look at people of my generation and maybe 10 years younger than me, we had almost no training at all. So then I think you either have talents and you are a good leader, or you are not, but it's not in any way a structural training for this. And this is a big problem I find in academia. It's the same with our management requirements. We never wanted to become managers. So we are now managers of people and of resources, but I did never want to become a manager. So now I am a manager, but it's not actually something I like very much, but it's unfortunately part of being a senior scientist. But I think it's like the managing the people is what we talk about now. Yeah. But also managing the resources. And we should be much more trained in this, I find.
Yeah, I would follow up on this one because, for example, in industry, people take official training, which cover multiple aspects of professional life. As you said, it can be how you manage your team, management, all this type of training. So what are some of skills you believe would be key to cover, for example, at workshop or regular training in academia? Like, what would be the good one to have for us as well in academic life?
Well, I got a few, but this was an initiative of my direct boss who organized some training for all the team chefs in his department. And we had one training which was called How to Be a Good Boss. And it was really very relevant because we actually learned that depending on how the people are, like at which level are, at which experience they are, how motivated they are, you have to lead them differently. And this is something I had not learned before. And it was really useful to manage my team because I see now better why some people then don't do the things I have asked because this was not the right way to ask them, or it were not the tasks which were suitable for their experience. But this is something we had never learned before. So I think something like that, for example, would be very useful. We also recently had another training, which is also, I think, very relevant. And this is about how you manage a team with the remote working, which is still now much more frequent than it used to be before the pandemic. Because you have many people, you have very little overlap. So many people work at home at different days. So you have to make efforts to have the whole team in your institution at the same time. So I also found that really useful to learn more about the challenges of doing this. And then generally, I think about motivation is also a very, very useful topic. Because if you learn how to motivate your team members in the appropriate ways, you will have a much more motivated team with much better results, with less conflicts and so on. So already have 4 things, and conflict solving is also a very important topic. And I still need a lot of training in that, I think. Yes. Because as we said, you work with people, so there will always be conflicts among the people, you with the people, you with other people, the same level of other levels, and so on. Yeah. So it's also important. And then the last, but also I find very important, is the work-life balance, which is very essential to make sure that you don't burn out, that you can actually have a nice and fruitful and long career, and that you don't have a toxic working environment. And I'm happy that more attention is given to this now than it used to be in the past, because I think in the past, people just dropped out because of this, probably, but nobody followed this up. There was nothing done about this. So this is finally also improving.
Kind of as a small follow-up to that, in your experience, at least recently, I guess, if you're looking for additional training, for example, on conflict resolution, I guess like where do you typically look to find, those resources, where it may be articles or like YouTube videos, maybe like what are your trusted sources?
So at the moment, I have had workshops and I had some coaching sessions on this, but I would have very much liked to see some YouTube videos or read more about this, because then this is easier to organize. You can do it in your own time and you can do it anywhere. Whereas everything else has to be organized in a more formal matter, and also it's much more expensive, sorry for saying, because if you want to be coached, you have to pay, and if you have a workshop, you will have to pay the person giving the workshop, right? And I find that in academia there is very little money spent on this still, which is actually a shame, because industry has already realized that this pays back if you invest in this.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question, Dr. Schön, that is also related to this topic, especially mentoring in your own group. You've mentioned that through some workshops, you've learned that you'll have different individuals in your group, which will require some flexibility in how you deal with them, how you treat them. But at the same time, I think there is some merit to having some structure that you use yourself for developing this mentor-mentee relationship within your lab, within your group, especially with the aim that, given that whoever is in your group is a human being, you want to foster this sort of an empathetic relationship and an understanding relationship that also at the same time can help both of you reach your goals and be productive. So can you give us some insights on how you thought about this kind of process, and maybe also with time, how that maybe has changed, with more people that come into your lab? I'm sure you've learned more about how to fine-tune that kind of process.
I can start with saying you need a lot of time and patience. And I also think people evolve at their own pace, so you cannot force people to run before they can walk. And I have a lot of very junior scientists who need a lot of, I wouldn't say supervision, but indeed of mentoring, because everybody has natural talents, but not all the talents which are needed are there. So some people, for example, are terrible with deadlines. They're fantastic in other things, but they forget the deadlines constantly. So what I have now is that I ask everybody to have a personal planning for the month, which we can follow up. And we follow this up also on the departmental level, but in the team, it's the average per month. So if somebody performs badly, you don't have to feel bad like to the others, okay? So that's one thing we do. So I try to teach everybody how to plan and how to organize yourself. So that's one thing. And I still try to talk to everybody at least once a week, one-to-one, which is becoming more challenging because the group is now bigger and I used to have more time on this, but I still find it's very important. And if I don't do it after 2 to 3 weeks, I can see that some things start to slide. Another interesting trick, which I only recently applied because my colleague and partner suggested this to me, I found even on the one-on-ones, we ended up with like a bullet point of lists of action points when to be done. And then when we talked again, I saw that half of the actions had not taken place. So what I ask now from everybody is that they make a short report, only bullet points after the meeting with the deadlines. And then I see that very often some things have slipped, which we have talked about. So this way we are both more in control. So I see, has really everything been added, what we have discussed? And for them, it's really clear what my expectations are. And I was surprised to see that never were there all the points which we had spoken about, which were very clear for me, but not for the team members. So this was, so maybe it's too fast, maybe it's too much, I don't know, but I was really surprised about this, but it works much better now. So this is some of the advice I can give. But I say then for everybody, I have to see what the needs are. So I say some people need to have help at the deadlines. Some people have to be less organized because they also have to be a little bit flexible. And some people are too rigid in their planning. And when you then say, no, we now should actually do something else, then you have to divert them. So you have to also explain that not everything will work like you plan it. It's an important lesson, right? I know all of you know this lesson, but if you start, it's maybe not so obvious.
My own mentor once told me that, in terms of your development, failures are just opportunities to try again to find the right way of doing something. And so, off of that, do you feel like in your life you've been able to use failures, maybe, failures in quotations, but failures in terms of having a successful mentor-mentee relationship within your lab? Because, you had a long experience career as an academic, so you must have had a lot of junior members in your lab from undergrads to grads and postdocs. And so I'm interested in hearing how you've approached any, mentor-mentee relationships that maybe didn't go the right way, might have degraded in some way or something, and how you might have handled that. Because I'm pretty sure that's a tough conversation, but it's important to have.
Yes, there have been challenges, and I can say especially the COVID time has been extremely challenging because several of my team members just sat in one little apartment. They saw nobody for weeks. So that was really, really difficult. We tried then to have social meetings online, but I know this was a poor substitute. And I think some people have really not recovered from this. And this is very sad to say, but then sometimes you cannot do anything about this. I think, it's sometimes, you cannot solve all the problems because sometimes there are also other problems which are not work related, which cause the problems at work. And then I think you can offer advice, but it's not your call and it's not your life. So sometimes I think you just have to accept that things go the way you don't like them to go. But I'm very difficult in letting go. So I'm still practicing in this because I would like to solve everything, but I've learned that this is not possible. So you should try as much as possible, but sometimes, it will just not work out. Let's say it like that. But I like that you mentioned the failures because I actually think we should share failures more with junior colleagues because for them, a failure is really a huge thing. Whereas for experienced people like myself, if I look back, I have had many failures. Sometimes the failures actually lead to new, exciting and interesting things. And sometimes you learn an important lesson for the years to come. So it would be better indeed to share this more often, because very often people don't like to share this because you feel inadequate or you feel stupid. Yeah, you have egg on your face. Yeah, I mean, there are many expressions for this, but I think it would be good to share this more. Yeah. I have already shared a lot of the rejection of papers because I have a lot of experience in this. And that has already helped the junior members when they had to submit and they get then these very horrible comments back. So that is something which we have already covered, I think, here. And also experiment-wise, I think all of you also know that very often things don't go the way you would like them to go. And then you learn and you try again, but sometimes some ideas just never work. Let's be honest here. Well, you have to wait 20 years for them to work. So maybe in 20 years then you have addressed this. Yeah.
Oh my God. But I guess like in your experience, both as a leader, as a scientist who may have had a lot of paper rejections or experimental failures, how have you been able to, I guess, stay adaptive and kind of like forward thinking and just not like dwell in like, oh my God, this could have gone better, or like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Like, how have you been able to deal with failure, both, I guess, leadership wise or like scientific?
So I find actually it helps if you have several irons in the fire. So if you not only have one line of research, because for a while I had only the Ostrocodes, and some things didn't work well. Like we had this question about asexuality, and the comment we constantly got that they are not asexual. So it was like trying to run against the wall. So then it helped to do some other research on other topics where you can advance, which gives you positive energy, and that helps you then to deal with the more challenging parts. So my advice would be to not only do one thing, but to diversify somewhat. And that certainly helps, I think, with the experiments and also with the papers, because then you have a better chance to at least have some things which go easier or go well. But I think you have to be very patient and you should never give up. This is my motto, never give up. But I have that stubborn streak, I think. Yeah. But I think it's an important characteristic for scientists to not give up easily, because it's very often not so easy, but then these are the most interesting things, I find, the ones which not necessarily come easy. But you should not only have something where you have to lift the Himalaya. So you should also have some things which work a little bit easier, better.
I know from a PhD student side who's kind of just starting and trying to iron out all the different problems in my project. I know when my PI talks to me about the things he struggled with when he started, and also hearing you speak, it's definitely very comforting to hear the different failures people that I look up to and are so successful have also experienced. That makes me feel better for sure. So thank you. Based on kind of the questions that you've been answering so far, and also from our initial outreach with you, we really noticed how important and significant personal connections are to you for a safe working environment in academia. And not just as a PI, but as a mentor and a fellow scientist, what have you found kind of additional things or actions or attitudes or different resources that have helped you foster a safer environment for, I guess, your team and also the colleagues at your institute?
I think it helps a lot if you don't only do activities work-related, so that you at least have some team building activities in the year, even if it's only all going to lunch to a very nice restaurant. I mean, ideally, it would be involving some more physical activity, but we have not got around to that yet. We're more at the eating track. Yeah. So it helps because, people relax and they open up more, and you also hear other things, not only work. So I find that helps a lot. And I think it also helps to be flexible, like not be like a German general where everybody has to call in at 8 o'clock in the morning, which would not be possible for some of the members of this meeting here, I think. So I think, there should also be some flexibility, because we know science is not a 9-to-5 job, but that also has advantages, right? So of course, then you have the challenge that people should see each other, but I find it helps to be flexible because this allows also people to do other things beside their work. Some people find it important to have a morning run or a morning yoga session or something like that. And I think it's good if they can actually do this and combine this with the work. Yeah, and I think, yeah, it's nice if the team is more social, like if it's welcoming to new members and if also people help each other. And I have the feeling that this is important. So you don't see each other as competitors. You see each other really like a team. So there is a team spirit. It's not, yeah, I will, if you advance, then I will not, or yeah, so that would be bad. I think that would, in my eyes, be a toxic working environment. If you would have 5 competing PhD students and you would say, I will only give one of you a postdoc position, that would be awful. So I would never lead a team like this. No, that would be terrible. No.
Well, thanks a lot. And for people like me who hates morning, special thanks about being such a wonderful member. Yeah, such a wonderful mentor who understands. And I would follow because it sounds totally amazing when you can do this type of stuff in a normal life. But you were leading this polar research at your institution. So can you, I have a feeling that it would be different when you have this cruise several months, and how do you manage your team in such extreme condition? Because there is nothing you can do. You have very limited amount of time. You're somewhere far away on a ship and you need to get your result. So of course, it's obviously not about waking up early or late. You do what you do, but any challenges you as a leader can comment on?
I have not been on a ship yet. I have only sent people because I don't like the cold. So this was has not presented itself yet, this possibility. But I have had periods where I was more or less out because of health reasons. So there are challenges, and I know it's not easy when you are not accessible. And I think in that, in these challenging times, I would have liked to have more postdocs in my team, which I didn't have. And then it was much more difficult. So also now, I'm now a month here in the US, and I will not see everybody one-to-one because this will also, with the time difference, just be too complicated. I've made a plan what everybody will do while I'm away. And I will try to follow up on that plan per email. So I hope that will work. And I also see that people, like the times when I was out for the health reasons, that people helped each other a lot. So they relied on each other, and they also referred to each other for help. Because I say everybody has different talents. So that also helped within the team. And for that, it was good that there was a team spirit so that really the team members could help each other. But I think, yeah, if you would indeed be away 3 months, this would be very difficult. And I actually think maybe as a team leader, I would not do that anymore. So I would go away for 4 weeks, maybe 6, like in the summertime when also people take their holidays. But I think it would be, then I would have to leave somebody in charge. This would be my feeling, because I don't know, I would not be at ease if people would just be left by themselves for so long. But then maybe I'm overprotective. I don't know.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a follow-up on this topic, which is, it must be very anxious to think that, it's out of your control when you get sick, or it's out of your control when you have to take an extended leave. But at the same time, there's this anxiety as yourself as a team leader. You worry about the team not gelling together well, or not talking to each other, or not helping each other. So do you think there is either for yourself, you've already done this, or maybe as advice for people to be able to safeguard against that, like either by prepping their team to be able to cooperate in your absence, or, for them to know what to do if you go? I'd like to hear what you think about that.
Yes, I think it would help to like delegate your tasks to the different members. And I think I could also do this a little bit. And we're now building on this so that many tasks can actually be delegated so that there's always at least one person who knows how to do something, even if it's just ordering new products, that when I'm not there, that they can do this by themselves. So I think you should train people to be able to delegate. And I think it's also good if you are a junior researcher to get responsibilities in which you grow, because eventually you will have more responsibilities if you are a PhD student. So regardless what you will do, if you stay in academia, if you go to industry, whatever, you will get more responsibilities. So I think it's also good to train people in adapting to that. So one suggestion would certainly be to have different tasks which are delegated to different people. And you don't throw them in and say, now, here in the water, swim, but you actually teach them how to swim, or they teach each other how to swim. Yeah. What also works well now, I find, is using a lot more of the IT resources, like having shared documents for ordering for products so that everybody knows what is there. And we have the absolute policy on penalty of death. Well, not really, but if you use the last product, say so that we can reorder it, that sort of thing. That also all helps to get better organized, I think. Yeah. But I also, even when I was out, if people needed me, I would always have been available for a phone call, for example. Preferably not when I had surgery, but I mean, yeah, it was not that I was completely off the planet. So I think I could not work well on the laptop, but now with the smartphones, this has all improved so much. So I think to stay in touch is much easier than it used to be. And it would even be on a boat, because the people who have been on the boat, they still had WhatsApp, surprisingly. So the email did not necessarily work so well, but they had satellite connection and they could always WhatsApp. So that was already quite good, I thought. But that was on the boat, whereas I think if you are in the Amazon jungle, then there is really nothing. So then you would be off. But this could just be a few days. I think most people would not be in the jungle for 6 months or so, right? So now and then maybe you would have to go back and get more supplies or something.
Yeah, that is very interesting, because like it's very clear that your coordination of the polar research program and also the extensive field work that followed must have involved just so many numerous challenges. But I guess shifting back to the broader academic experiences, I guess we just talked about the difficulty of getting the team communicating with each other, especially, for example, if you as a leader is away, not on a boat. You've also mentioned kind of like the detrimental nature of a toxic environment if, for example, leaders are not leading, or if people are not mentored in a way that best allow them to flourish. And I'm sure you've heard of the term toxic academia in discussion a lot. This could be due to, I guess, the intense uncertainty, the pressure, or even just a variety of non-academic related factors. How do you perceive the term, I guess, in a context of your own career and experiences? And do you feel that it currently accurately represents the challenges within the academia system?
Well, I think for me, a toxic environment is if competition comes first. If you come first, and no matter the cost, you want to be number one. You want to be the one with the Nature publication. You want to be the one to get the Nobel Prize. Yeah, I'm now exaggerating, but and you don't care, what the cost is for your colleagues, for your team, or whomever. So this would, for me, be the ultimate toxic working environment. But I think even degraded versions of this are toxic environment. And I also have some reservations about groups which become really big, where actually the group leader has no idea anymore what is going on, because the group is so big that everything is in like interlevels. So you have postdocs who supervise PhD students, who supervise master and undergraduate students. and you have no idea anymore what actually the students on the bottom of the food chain, let's say it like that, do, and because only the postdocs report to you. I would not like to be in such a team, because I think this could be the beginning of a toxic working environment, because you would only hear about problems when probably things have already happened and are too late. So I think there is some danger in if there are very big groups, but there are groups like this. I'm not saying that all big groups would be like this, but I think there is more risk if you have too many, if you are not knowing anymore what is going on, right? As the boss, yeah. Then of course you have many things which we have not talked about: harassment, because you are a woman, because you are different, which is still happening. I mean, being a woman has not been easy for many, many years. It's finally changing in science, but still, if you look at the numbers in Europe, at least, the numbers of female professors, it's still disappointing. And already 20 years ago, I was told, yeah, this will change in the next 10 years. And I still find it changes at a snail pace. And that is only one of the groups of the minorities, as we know. So we have not talked about this, but we all know that this is also happening, and this is very difficult to address. And I actually believe that most people would just leave to whom that happens, which would not change the system. It would actually, in a way, reinforce the system, because there would not be solutions. I think there are some things changing, but it's going very slowly. And in my opinion, academia is a very conservative system. And I'm also very sorry for the postdocs of today, because I find it has become much worse since I have been a postdoc. So the contracts become shorter, the pressure becomes more, there are less positions, there's less grants, there's less money for research and so on. So I find it's not working anymore, the system the way it is. And also, if you compare academia to other disciplines, where else is it normal that you have no permanent position until you're 40 or more? I mean, this is really ridiculous. So if you look back, I think historically people studied, did a PhD, did one postdoc, and then became a professor. So then it worked. But now this is not working anymore. And people do many postdocs, and they have to move around to do this. So they can never actually put down roots somewhere and have a family and a normal life as well. And yeah, I think this is I don't see that this is going the right way. So I'm concerned. I'm concerned about all of you. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
thanks.
Sorry for. Yeah.
We appreciate and we deeply appreciate leaders like you who understand those issues, who really concern and who want to make change, maybe a bit of connection back to you starting BWise and running an organization like this. And you have by now clearly leading teams for so many years. Maybe you can what's your own suggestions? How can we help young generation of scientists? I mean, we need help.
Yeah.
But what about people after us? Exactly. So do you have any suggestions, any thoughts on that?
Well, I thought the strikes had been a really good idea last year, because finally, young people in academia had a voice and voiced their problems. I don't know if this has amounted to anything, because I am not so familiar with the US academic system. So I don't know, did the demands you had, were they fulfilled, or were they fulfilled a little bit or not at all? I don't know. That's something you have to answer me. But I thought that was good, that finally people said this is no longer possible, do something about it. So that is maybe a good step in the right direction, but it's not solving the way the whole system is. And there I actually think we should address the governments and the funding agencies, because they are the ones who do the programs, and they are the ones who give these short contracts. For example, in Belgium, one of the big science foundations, the Flemish Science Foundation, only funds 2 postdocs now, whereas they used to fund 3. So what happens when you don't have permanent position after postdoc too. And I think most people would not. So these are developments where we should actually say this is not okay. And then I think that as many academics as possible should be on the same line and voice these concerns and say this is no longer possible. This has to change. But it's very difficult. But I think the more people could get involved, the more powerful it would be. Right? But yeah, I wish I would have a magic wand and I could change it. This would be nice. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, another thing is also when I studied, it was actually the normal development was that you stayed in academia, and if you dropped out, this was for the losers. I think it's not like that anymore, but there's still some cultural changes which would be good. So I think it should be fine whatever career you choose after your PhD. And people should also be trained outside of academic skills. And this I see is still a problem, even with these attempts in the doctoral schools. You should know much better what is out there besides an academic career, because most people will do other work, but you can choose and you can also train yourself much better if you know what other possibilities are there. And maybe this would also interest you more, because maybe you want to, I don't know, you want to work and help prevent climate change or things like that. And then maybe something else, another job would be more interesting than an academic career. But I think most of us are still trained to become researchers when you do a PhD. So there are many skills you could be trained in communication, in writing, in leadership, in communicating with the general public. So all of this are still skills which can be developed much further.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, which is the fact that there's like almost like an obscurity around the fact that there's a lot of path forward for researchers who have done a PhD, and in their mind, their career path is laid out for them, that you do a PhD to become a researcher in academia where you ask for public funds, and then, you're working at a university as a professor, when in fact there's a lot of other career paths that are ready to be explored. I think that's a big thing. But my question that I really want your insight on, it has to do with this change that you were mentioning around, especially the transition from postdoc to senior, early career, but a senior researcher, in terms of not being in training anymore. Nowadays, we see, the way I look at it is the private sector in terms of research has come and scooped up all the postdocs who kind of fall off the boat of academia, and they collect them, and then they're able to hire them for really good wages and utilize their skills to advance whatever private stakeholders have in this research. When in fact I view that's why part of my own motivation to staying in academia, no matter what, is because it's part of the public sector, and it has that component, where it's a part of advancing the benefit for the general public. But anyway, my question, not to take too long, is how do we combat this pervading winner takes all that has been the norm now in academia for academics, which is something that has been the leading cause for pushing postdocs out of academia and into industry, because they don't need to feed on scraps. They can go and actually get a decent salary in industry. So I'd like to hear what you think about that.
I think there could be more exchange between the postdocs who are in industry and, for example, PhD students. So I know that in some institutions, this is sort of organized, that you invite people back and they talk about their jobs and what they do, to actually show to PhD students, as we said, what the different paths are. And I think even if you go only to the public sector, there are many other possibilities besides doing research. You have agencies which need trained people. You have science policy things. So there are many other public sector jobs available, which are also still related to research. Even if you're not behind the bench anymore and do the experiment, your knowledge would still be very much extremely useful for this kind of jobs. But as you say, very often people don't know about it, or this is the scraps which are taken up. I think this can be people who can also have a big impact on solving the societal changes we have at the moment. Maybe more than sometimes in academia. Right? Yeah. So I personally like to stay in academia because it gave me a lot of freedom, and that I really appreciated. But I think maybe it's also a misconcept to think that you have no freedom anywhere else. This is probably also not entirely true, right? Because if you are in R&D in a company, you would still have at least some freedom, I think.
So just as kind of like a last question as we come up on time, how do you think the role of a leader, especially like a scientific leader, a scientist, will evolve in this upcoming decade, the next decade?
I think it will become much more inclusive, and I think social skills will become more important than they were, because people realize it's not the competitive stuff which gets you somewhere, but it's the networking. And if you are networking, then you are also a better leader, I think. Because we see that science is not anymore for the lone wolf, because you need a lot of resources, you need multidisciplinary approaches, you need big teams to answer questions. So in my view, these are the strengths you need to be good scientist, and these are also very advantageous because these are also characteristics which make a good leader.
I totally agree. I really hope that science will, as you say, take this turn in the next decade. And I know that among me and kind of my new cohort of PhD students, this is something that we talk about a lot, kind of how we want this academia and the scientific field to progress and the importance of these social skills. And since I'm in an institute in Europe, as you mentioned before, we do have some of these classes, which I think is really great, these kind of soft skills that you were talking about, which I think have definitely helped me a lot. And I'm really happy that they've started implementing these things. But it's really promising to see scientists that are already kind of in PI positions and have already made their way throughout this academic field, that you're also passionate about this and that you listen to the concerns of the young scientists. And I think it's really great for me to see, and I think it will really lead to us being able to make this change over the next decade. So to conclude, I just wanted to, of course, thank you so much, but also thank the Genetics Society of America and the ECLP program for the support of our community and membership engagement subcommittee that allows us to make these leadership dialogue series and talk to brilliant people like you that are so passionate about making a change. So most importantly, thank you so much, Dr. Isa Schön, for your insight. And we are so happy that you were able to join us here today.
Thank you very much for having me, and I hope that science will develop in the way we all wish. Okay.